Hello, good evening, good afternoon, or good morning, depending on where you are. Lots of people were moaning after the last podcast, whatever we call these things, that my diction wasn't up to much, and possibly was I pissed. I just sort of explained that in a piece of Greek cut-price dentistry, I lost 8 teeth at the bottom, and they won't be back in again on implants until sometime in November, which is fun for dentists, but not much for me. Anyway, yesterday I wrote a piece at the Slog called 5 Reasons Why Money is Going to Die, and I thought it might be interesting to add a little bit more to the empirical evidence about what a completely flawed strategy the neoliberal QE and ZERP cobblers is. Here's some official data, and so this is not opinion, it's allegedly fact. After roughly 4 years of QE in the US, money velocity now stands at a 60-year low. A strengthening economy would have rising velocity. It seems that there is no appetite for credit amongst the squeezed middle of consumers because they have wised up to the unaffordable should I try that one again? The unaffordability of debt. As the website Sober Look noted yesterday, and it says this with great sobriety, I thought, the Fed bought bonds of commercial banks in the hopes that these banks would lend the said money to the public. Unfortunately, bank loan growth has been tepid and trending down of late. That's indicative of weak demand for debt from consumers. Well done, Sober Look, right on the money. It certainly isn't indicative of recovery, nor were December's employment creation figures, which were just a little bit out, as in 50% lower than expected. Bad weather, said the analysts, omitting to remember that December also contains not just bad weather, but Christmas, when jobs are supposed to go up really rather a lot. October's Fed minutes show pretty clearly that even the hawks there now are starting to wonder whether the QE cost-benefit analysis made any kind of sense at all. Given the negligible effect it's had on both lending and spending, they should really have had second thoughts after QE1. Many observers have in turn pointed out that yet more easy money went into commodity speculation that didn't do anyone much good except about 10 firms on Wall Street. And is there any benefit at all in the stock market being overvalued by at least 40%? Common sense says no. It's nice for the time being, but conducive to a much broader panic when it inevitably corrects. The notion that QE has worked and the US is in real recovery must be one of the madder assertions of economic history. In 2010, QE monetized the entire US deficit for the year. Little of any benefit happened. By the end of summer 2012, the Fed held just over $2 trillion in purchase bonds, and even less was happening. And so what happens then? A third round of quantitative easing, QE3, I didn't stay up all night thinking about that one, was announced on 13th of September 2012, and in an 11-to-1 vote, the wisdom of crowds, the Federal Reserve decided to launch a new $40 billion a month bout. And this was then more than doubled, because it didn't work, to $85 billion in December of that year. As a result of QEs, the Fed's balance sheet has more than quadrupled to $4 trillion. That is equivalent to 80% of the entire world's gold stock, and made it by far the most massive economic stimulus program in world history. But every time, the discernible effect has been steadily reduced in what we experts call diminishing returns. But if it is thus the maddest economic stimulus program in world history as well as the biggest, there's plenty of other bits of news around to suggest that our species is mad in multivariate ways. The European Central Bank is concerned that national differences in how bad debt is classified, could cripple its probe into the health of euro area banks, according to an internal ECB document, which, frankly for me, comes under the heading of "you would say that." Using a strict definition of bad debt, says the ECB, could threaten banks in countries hit hardest by Europe's debt crisis. Well, call me wacky, but didn't a patently lax method of defining bad debt play something of a featuring role in getting us to the depth of pool we're in today? In America yesterday, the S&P fell 1.3% to 1,818, the lowest level since December the 20th. Companies from Microsoft to Exxon and Walt Disney dropped more than 2%, with all 10 main industries in the S&P 500 declining. Listen to this one. Sentiment is extremely optimistic, and that's a negative for stocks, said Bruce Bittles. What a name, especially if you've got no teeth. Said Bruce Bittles, chief investment strategist at R.W. Baird & Co. And then he went on to say, blah, 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 blah. Is it just me, or do you get the feeling that Mr. Bittles would see a collapse as a minor correction and then a new rally as an unstoppable surge? Euro banknotes, mind you, whereas everybody else is switching to plastic, the European Central Bank said yesterday that choosing to fight counterfeiting with moving to plastic wasn't their way of doing things, and they would be introducing some new security measures instead of the move to plastic money. The ECB's executive board member Yves Mersch told a press conference, with 15 billion euro banknotes in circulation, the number of fakes remains very low in percentage terms. I couldn't possibly comment on why that is, but questions like, why counterfeit a fake, spring to mind. That's the sort of roundup, really. The original post from yesterday is, as I said, called 5 Reasons Why Money is Going to Die. And instead of being from a bloke who's actually trying to sell you something, it's from a bloke who's actually trying to tell you something. I have no axe to grind in this whatsoever, other than, of course, I'd like to get rid of all this bollocks of a system as soon as possible. But if you want to read that and every other thing that I come out with, go to the Slog, and if you type into Google John Ward the Slog, or John Ward at the Slog, or the Slog by John Ward, it should come up either first or second. I hope you can manage to do that, and in the meantime I'll be back with another bulletin on the nature of human insanity in the very near future. Thank you so much for listening, and I will bid you, as I said, good afternoon, good evening or good morning, depending on where you are. Thank you.